Hey guys, welcome to Hosea 9. Now, Hosea 9 is going, I think it's kind of a takeoff of Hosea 8, but there's more details to cover in here and some stuff that may be very representative of things we know now. So I want to get right into it because right off the bat, there's some stuff we can cover in the first couple of verses. Excuse me. Judgment of Israel's sin. Do not rejoice, O Israel, with joy like other peoples. For you have played the harlot against your God. You have made love for hire on every threshing floor. The threshing floor and the winepress shall not feed them, and the new wine shall fail her. Now, it's very interesting. What would that be representative of? So, what was the threshing floor? What was it for? Because this is representative of something else. What would the threshing floor was it used for? The preparation of the grain, and then they would run it through the tribulum, and then they would toss it up in the air, and it would blow the chaff away, and then the only thing left was the kernels. Those would be scooped up, and then they'd take them and they'd mill them down or grind them down to make the flour. So, to me, whenever I'm reading this threshing floor thing, this is the place where the food was done, business was taken care of there. And maybe he's referring to that in how their interactions are with other nations. Because he says in the first verse, you have made love for hire on every threshing floor. Well, the threshing floor is where the food was made. You know, they were bringing on. Wouldn't that be involved in like the business between nations they have now, shipping, commerce, that kind of stuff? It seems to me like maybe that's what he's referring to here, because they're making deals with other nations they probably shouldn't be. Because the Lord said, "I'm going to take care of you. You will produce everything you need right there out of your nation. You don't need to do that, but they do." Seems to me that's kind of what it's for. They're making these deals, and they should not be making these deals. And so he says, since they're going to do that, then they're not going to get that stuff. In verse 2. Verse 3. They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt and shall eat unclean things in Assyria. And he did that. 70 AD. They were dispersed around the world. They shall not offer wine offerings to the Lord, nor shall their sacrifices be pleasing to him. It shall be like bread of mourners to them. All who eat it shall be defiled, for their bread shall be for their own life. It shall not come into the house of the Lord. He did that. They have no temple. They have not been able to do this. The Lord put a stop to it. Verse 5. What will you do in the appointed day and in the day of the feast of the Lord? What feast is that? What feast is he talking about there? Wedding feast. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. What will you do in the appointed day? What's the appointed day? The day that's coming. The tribulation. What will you do in the tribulation? And in the day of the feast of the Lord. Verse 6, for indeed they are gone because of destruction. Egypt shall gather them up. Memphis shall bury them. Nettles shall possess their valuables of silver. Thorns shall be in their tents. Now this is all allegorical speaking here. It's representative of something else. And you look up what those things are, the nettles and the thorns, and what they can be likened to, and you start to see what he's talking about here. They're not ever going to find any comfort anywhere. Verse 7, the days of punishment have come. The days of recompense have come. Israel knows. The days of punishment have come. The days of recompense have come. Israel knows. Seems to me like they're going to know what happened and why it happened. They're going to know in the tribulation what's going on and why it's going on. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is insane because of the greatness of your iniquity and great enmity. The watchman of Ephraim is with my God, but the prophet is a fowler snare in all his ways. Enmity in the house of his God. So the watchmen are the ones who are doing the right thing, but the prophets aren't. They're going the other direction. How amazing. The same thing's happening now. We have watchmen now that are fighting for the truth of the Bible. We have the prophets and the apostles and the pastors. There are no real apostles today, and if there are already prophets, we've never met any. They don't advertise. They're the problem. And you can look at that and compare it to the Bible and see, yep, it fits the criteria. It's exactly what they're doing. And they'll argue, oh, that there can be apostles. No. When have you seen the risen Lord? That's the first part of the criteria of being an apostle. You must have seen the risen Lord. They haven't seen him. So they can't be. Prophets, you cannot be wrong on anything. Anything. If you come forward and you make a prophetic statement or a prophetic word and say this is something that's going to happen, or it even looks like it's going to happen, and it doesn't, false prophet. That's what the Bible says. So yeah, there's a reason why chapter or verse 7 says that. The prophet is a fool. And then he gets into the spiritual man. The spiritual man is insane. Well, look at what people are doing that are calling themselves spiritual. And it looks like insanity. It looks like they've lost their minds. They look like the one we talked about in Mark this morning, throwing himself on the ground, foaming at the mouth. You ever go and see that stuff in some of them churches? It's a rock concert in there. But look at them. It has nothing to do with God and only everything to do with them. So yeah, verse 7, yeah, that fits today pretty clearly. And then the watchman, verse 8. They're the only ones doing the right thing right now. There's some that aren't. But it seems like a pretty big chunk of them are fighting for what's right. It seems like that's just about almost the only place you can get to. People, when you ask people to count, okay, what churches do you know of that are teaching real biblical truth? And it's like on one hand to count them. And that should not be. The theological seminaries, you look at the list of theological seminaries. I saw a list yesterday or the day before. And I started seeing all these seminaries, and it's like, this is stuff that's in my state. You can't even begin to get involved in any of these guys. That's terrible. It should not be that way. So here's a great picture of what's happening now. Verse 9. They are deeply corrupted. It's in the days of Gibeah. He will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers, as the firstfruits, on the fig tree in its first season. But they went to Baal Peor and separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing they loved. Again, keep in mind, we're not going to be able to cover everything in here, but we'll cover what we can find. But look at what he's saying here. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. You don't ever eat the first crop in the first season. Usually the first crop is thrown away, or it's something special. And then everything else you sell. Like anybody will plant a vineyard, the first crop becomes theirs. But then everything after that, after everything's gotten established, then they start to sell that. Sometimes the first crop gets thrown away. It's no good. Because the trees that you've transplanted are bringing in those nutrients from the ground. Because there's a thought process behind it's better if you're going to eat produce to eat it from your area, your region. Because what's in the ground there and what's in the water there is going to be in those vegetables. You take it from other places, like say Chile, for example. Like there was one big ranch here a bunch of years ago, great big place in Chile we were getting all this produce from. Turns out they were using human sewage to water the plants. And they were shipping this stuff to Walmart and to places like that. Well, they had to quit pulling from them. They had to quit buying from them. And so you end up with terrible quality. And from another country, it's picked green. You're supposed to have it ripe, not green. That's why it has no flavor. Grow broccoli, go to the store, buy broccoli. Cook them both up separately, compare the taste. Totally different. So a lot of times, that first crop is no good. And the wild grapes, if they're not cultivated, they don't grow correctly. So he's liking that to people. You can start to see the connection here and what he's referring to as to the people. They were like grapes in the wilderness. So they were sparse. There was just a few. And they were wild and overgrown. He saw them as the fig trees. The first fruits on the fig tree in its first season. You can't deal with those. Most of the time, that stuff was thrown away. That stuff was gotten away with. But they went to Baal Peor. Here we go. It turned out to not be any good. And separated themselves to that shame. And usually the first crop on a tree is unedible. Fruit trees will just show you that. First crop, no good. They got to be established first. And then you get good crops of them. The first ones sometimes are bitter. Then you get the sweet ones afterwards. Verse 11, as for Ephraim, their glory shall fly away like a bird. No birth, no pregnancy, and no conception. Though they bring up their children, yet I will bereave them to the last man. Yes, woe to them when I depart from them. It is only because the Lord is there that they are able to receive protection, that they're able to receive blessing. Verse 13, just as I saw Ephraim like Tyre, planted in a pleasant place, so Ephraim will bring out his children to the murderer. Give them, O Lord, what will you give? Give them a miscarrying womb and dry breasts. This is a curse. All their wickedness is in Gilgal. For there I hated them, because of the evil of their deeds. I will drive them from my house. I will love them no more. All their princes are rebellious. Ephraim is stricken. Their root is dried up. They shall bear no fruit. Yes, were they to bear children, I would kill the darlings of their womb. My God will cast them away, because they did not obey him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations. And that's what happened. In fact, historically and miraculously, Israel is the only nation to ever be cast away for that long of an exile and then to come back with their original language to their original land. No other nation can boast this. No other nation has any records of this. Once they're gone, they're gone. You don't see them no more. In any form similar to what they used to have. But God did that. And he showed his love by bringing them back, because he's using them to also fulfill his final days prophecies. So yeah, this makes perfect sense, because it's talking about this is how bad they were. I'm going to cast them away. 1900 years flung to the four corners of the earth. Just now they're coming back. Just now they're returning home. You go look at what God is doing in the world. A lot of people are trying to figure out why Russia and Ukraine are in such a war. Did you know that when that war started, that was the catalyst that drove the Jews from Ukraine to head back to the homeland? God is bringing his people home. So now we know what the real purpose of that war was for. The rest of the world doesn't know that. Some people who are paying attention do, because they see it. God is bringing his children home. In fact, in a lot of those places, either disaster or conflict has pushed them, just in the last 10 years, has pushed them back to the homeland. God's bringing his people back, bringing them back where they should be. He's fulfilling his promise. He's fulfilling his prophecy. It's actually really, really miraculous to watch. Really incredible to see. He makes these really strong accusations and really strong condemnations towards his people, but look at what he's doing. Because he said also, I will bring them back, and I will make them a nation again, and I will make them strong, the center of all things. And look at what's happening. The very thing he said was going to happen. And consequently, the rest of the world is receiving, i.e. benefit or curse, because of it. To fulfill prophecy, to fulfill end times. These books, we may not fully understand everything that these prophets are talking about, but it does give us insights into what God is doing and why he's doing it. It helps us understand that this is important. It has to happen this way. Some people are going to get saved because of this. So it has to happen this way. And God's glory is going to be paramount in all of this. So yeah, this has to happen this way. These events must unfold. As terrible as they may seem, it must unfold. As harsh as it seems how the Lord is addressing his chosen people, these things must go this way in order for him to fulfill the word that he has given. Tomorrow will be Hosea 10, Israel's sin and captivity. We're going to keep going on that thought. It'll be a continuation of Hosea 9, because I think, and then God gets into his love. So yeah, we're going to see very similar as what the last prophets have talked about, how God shows this is everything that I have against Israel. This is all the things that I'm going to do to Israel. But I still love them, and I'm still going to save them. But they're going to go through a whole lot of grief before we get to that point, which they have done. So God is keeping his promise, and this should be encouraging to us. It may look terrible on the outside, but on the inside it's an encouragement, because if he's keeping his promise to his people, he's going to keep his promises to us too. because we are his people as Christians. So let us pray for Israel. Let's lift them up in prayer and ask the Lord to save his people, because he's going to bring mercy on them, to make them the nation that they were meant to be, because that means blessing to us too. Because if he keeps his promises with them, he'll keep them with us. We can count on it. We can bank on it. We can put our full faith, trust, and hope in him and in those promises. All right, guys, that was Hosea 9. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.